I said I got my morning exercise.
Line Railway. This was once part of the Skagit River Railway system, and it's the only part of that system that's still operating today. And unlike most other pieces of equipment up in this area, this piece of equipment is still not automated. It still runs on people power. So what we need you to do is, you folks along the edge here, if you just reach over, there's some hand cranks. No? Okay. Well, actually, there is another way, and that's good, because people don't usually go for the hand crank business. Up in that shed there's a man named Wayne. Now, it's Wayne's job all day long to pull us up and down the mountain, and he gets a little distracted sometimes, because that's all he does, is he sits there and pulls us up and down the mountain. So if we want to go up today, we need to get his attention. So on the count of 3, we want you all to wave your arms wildly and yell, "Let's go, Wayne." All right? You ready? 1, 2, 3. He heard us, so please prepare for a slight jolt as we begin. This lift was once part of a railway system. Now, Seattle built the Skagit River Railway system to transport people and materials up here for the construction of this project. The line began 31 miles to the west of here in the town of Rockport, where a line of the Great Northern Railroad ended. Seattle continued the line up here. It followed the Skagit River all the way here to this area. And along the way, it covered some rough terrain, but there wasn't anything really unusual about the railway system until it got here to Diablo. Now, if you look around us, you can see that Diablo is in a box canyon. Now, the Diablo Dam construction site is on the upstream side of an extremely narrow gorge. So we had to do some modifications in order to get the railroad cars up to the construction site. And this lift was a modification that we used. Tracks on the lift. So we would load 1 or 2 boxcars onto the lift, haul them up the base of the mountain. At the top, they would be met by a small diesel locomotive that would pull them on over to the Diablo Dam construction site. Now, when we built the Ross Dam, we used the same procedure. We used this incline lift, only when we got to the newly formed Diablo Lake, we loaded all of the boxcars onto barges and barged them up the lake to the Ross construction site. Now, this was a very, very long and laborious process. In fact, for the construction of Diablo Dam alone, it took over 11,000 loads of concrete on this lift. So it was a very, very big process. Now, if you look here, coming down toward us, you see that big piece of steel and concrete? That's our counterbalance. It's 45 tons. It offsets this 55-ton platform. And there's a dip in the tracks, and that's where the counterbalance will be going underneath this platform. Now, we're traveling at 558 feet of track, up a 70% grade. When we get to the top, we will have gained 313 feet in elevation. We'll be at about 1,200 feet above sea level when we get to the top of the incline. The platform that we're on is capable of carrying 79 tons of cargo, and that's why we feed you the chicken dinner after the tour. There, that counterbalance goes right beneath us. Now that we've gained some elevation, we can point out some of the prominent scenery in the area. If you look off to the extreme left over here, you can see Colonial Peak. That's the tallest peak that we can see from here. It stands 7,800 feet above sea level. Immediately to its right is the aptly named Pyramid Peak. Now, Pyramid Peak is 7,200 feet above sea level, and it is a perfect example of a glacially sculpted horn. Now, the North Cascades National Park Complex has about a quarter of all of the glaciers in the lower 48 states within the bounds of the park. And if you look around this area, you can see much evidence of glacial activity. There are some beautiful U-shaped valleys, and down below us you see the green water of Gorge Lake. Diablo Lake also has very distinctively green water, and it is caused by the glaciers. You see, when those glaciers move down the mountain, they carve up our native rock called Skagit gneiss, spelled G-N-E-I-S-S, into a very, very fine rock powder. That powder is carried down into the lakes when the ice melts, and it's so fine that it remains suspended in the water. When the sun refracts off of those rock particles, it makes the water a very distinctive green color. And that gneiss rock, as I said, is native in this area. If you look around as we As we are walking through Windy Gap, you might be able to catch some of the gneiss. It's a very black and white colored rock, and that is the rock that the glaciers carve up. It used to be used in the winter to carry workers up and down the mountain. It's not used anymore because it was very unpredictable, and so we finally shut it down several years back. It used to be called the shake, rattle, and roll because you never knew when it was going to stop. In fact, one day some workers were riding up in it and it stopped, and they didn't know when it would start again, so they decided to walk up the rest of the way. Well, it decided to start again when they were about a quarter of the way from the top. So they got chased out the top end of the incline. That's why we don't use it anymore. This one is much more reliable. Now, across the valley there is that wooded peak. That's Davis Peak. It was named after Lucinda Davis, one of the early pioneers to this area. She came here from Colorado with her 3 children, Frank, Idessa, and Glee, and they had a roadhouse at the mouth of Stitano Creek down here as you came into Diablo. That roadhouse was the first hydroelectric project in the area because Frank and Glee hooked up a water wheel generator to Stitano Creek, and that made enough electricity to light up the 11 rooms of their roadhouse. All right, we're almost to the top. We're going to be taking a walk from here. We'll be going down through Windy Gap down to the boats. It is a flat and level walk. It's about 1/3 of a mile. We do encourage you to walk along with us, but if you feel like you can't do that and you'd prefer to ride in the shuttle van, I'll be driving that van, so just stay out here to the right as you get off, and as soon as everyone's off the lift, I'll load you into the van. If you're going to walk over, follow Doug, and he'll lead you over and tell you a lot more things about Diablo Dam.
Look at the road.
I don't know. Who operates that? That's private? Ran by the Presley family. Dam, and Diablo Dam is the second dam in the Skagit hydroelectric project. Now, Diablo Dam is 1,200 feet across at its crest and stands 389 feet high. It was built between the years 1927 and 1929, and its time of completion was the highest single arch type dam in the world. Now, a single arch type dam design employs a horizontal arch, which is like a rainbow turned on its side, to divert the water pressure from the center of the dam out to the canyon walls. Not only does this make the dam more practical, but it makes it more economical to build because you need less concrete. On a dam like the Grand Coulee, it's known as a gravity dam, and it's the weight or the mass of the concrete which is holding the water back. Here at Diablo, it's the design of the dam what actually is containing the reservoir. Now, as you look out at Diablo Dam, it has 19 spillway gates, it has 12 on this side and 7 on the opposite side. To give you an idea, if we were to open all those spill gates at one time, it would fill the King Dome in less than 10 minutes. Now, it's very infrequent that we will open a spillway gate here at Diablo. We try to use as much water as possible for power generation. If we do open spillway gates, we'll open the 3 on the very far opposite side there most often. As you can see over there, the water will come down and it'll shoot straight down into the canyon below. This really cuts down on the erosion factor that we have from spilling water. There's only 2 reasons to spill water here at Diablo Dam. One, if there's an extra heavy spring runoff into Diablo Lake behind the dam, or 2, for the fisheries down below. Now, a lot of people ask why we don't have fish ladders on our dams. Well, it's a very narrow canyon down there, and the salmon were never able to get this far up the Skagit River. They got as far as the town of New Halem. So when they built the dams, they didn't include fish ladders. Instead, they monitor the level of the river downstream and will spill during critical times such as spawning. Now, if we would just want to spill a little bit of water, not as much as maybe opening up a gate or something, we can use the valve housing located in the center of the dam there. Now, that contains 3 butterfly valves. If you can imagine a quarter inside of a pipe, you can imagine the principle behind a butterfly valve, and that'll shoot water straight out down into the canyon below. Now, as we walk along, you can look down to the canyon. You'll notice it's very narrow, about 12 feet across at its narrowest point. Well, that's determined where we built Diablo Dam. When hydroelectric engineers looking for a place to locate a project, they try to pick very narrow gorges and canyons, both for economical and practical reasons. Well, the narrowness of the Diablo Gorge below, combined with the steep canyon walls you see on either side, made this an ideal place to locate Diablo Dam. Now, I also point out the narrowness of the canyon below because that is from where we get our name. So you can imagine the early Skagit River flowing through a very narrow canyon, combined with the strong winds that we get up here, would produced a howling-like sound. Well, the early Skagit Native Americans in the area had stories that this was the entrance to the spirit world. And when the early miners and prospectors entered into the area, they heard these stories about the spirit world. They heard the moaning sound, and they thought it sounded more like the devil. So they named the area Diablo after the Spanish word for devil. Now, if you look directly across the canyon there, you'll notice the road. Diablo Dam is a public roadway, and you can drive down there from Highway 20. It is a dead-end road on this side. It used to end down at the old Diablo Lake Resort. 2 years ago, that resort went out of business. Since then, Seattle City Light has bought the land, and they plan to build an environmental learning center there, hopefully to open in a couple years. Well, if you'd like to continue following me, we'll head over to Diablo Dam and then onto the boat.
Very similar to the White House. Part of the White House.
Oh, that would be good.
Sounds fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need it in.
To get all the special room.
Where's the boat?
Hey Bill, how you doing? Yeah.
Hey, I can.
We'll get a tour through here. Probably more like 2 or 3 minutes. Why? I just wanted to walk out. After the tour you can drive out on there. You can actually take Highway 20 up, but on the tour itself we never actually go out onto the dam itself. Just logistically wise, getting a group of this many onto a one-lane road is
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're now looking out at Diablo Lake. Diablo Lake is 4.5 miles long and stretches from here at Diablo Dam up to the Ross Dam, which is about 2 miles behind that bend you see at the end of the lake up there. Now at its deepest point, which is directly behind the dam here, Diablo Lake is 350 feet deep. And as that ascends the old Skagit River bed, up at the Ross Dam, it's only 42 feet deep. So you can see the elevation drop there. Now if you look directly out in front of us here, you'll notice these diversion boom logs, and they divert debris from this large blue-green piece of machinery you see behind us here. We'll roll that out on the railroad tracks. You might have noticed one across the top of the dam. They'll roll it out and open up manhole covers, hook it up to those covers, and then lift those spillway gates one at a time hydraulically. Still the original way they used to do it when they used to open them in 1929. The only three down at the other end are automated, and those can be raised by remote control, but the rest of them have to be raised by the iron mule there. Also, the logs here keep material from entering into the intake tunnel, and that's located 40 feet directly below us. You'll notice this metal rack here on the front, that keeps it's known as the trash rack, and that keeps smaller debris from entering into that tunnel. The tunnel is 19 feet in diameter, passes through the hillside that we just walked across, and it comes out below the Diablo powerhouse, and there it drops straight off and is used for power generation. Now if you look out at Diablo Lake, you can see Highway 20 that goes along the top of it. Highway 20 was known as the $1 million a mile highway when it was completed in 1972. It cost $1 million for every mile between here and the town of Mazama, mainly because of all the blasting they had to do to remove debris to get the highway through the hills. And that highway is generally closed late October until early April. If you look directly across the lake there, you'll notice Overlook Point. As you drive along Highway 20, it's excellent turn off to look back onto the lake where we are right now. Now, so we look out here and you'll notice the boat coming this way. That's the Alice Ross 3 or tour boat that will soon be boarding. Directly behind that island there is where the old resort was, and off to the left there is that large green boathouse. Now, the only way to get up to Ross Lake from this end, or up to the Ross Dam, Ross Lake area from this end, is by boat. And so all the workers up there have to commute, and they keep power boats inside that green boathouse, and they go up there every morning and come back every evening. Now, to the left there is a fisherman's tug, and that's a ferry that comes up here at Diablo Lake, and that leaves every day, 8:30, 3 o'clock, and that carries people up to the Ross Powerhouse, and then for a portage fee, you can have the Ross Lake Resort meet you at the bottom of flatbed trucks, and they'll carry your gear up onto Ross Lake. Now, if we look straight out into the lake here, and you look off to the right, you'll notice the lake kind of heads into the right there. That's known as Thunder Arm, and that's where Thunder Creek enters into Diablo Lake here. Thunder Creek has the distinction of having more glacier feet than any other stream in the lower 48 states. Thunder Stream gets its name from the Boston Glacier, which is also one of the largest glaciers in the 48 states. As the front of the 48 states, and as the front of that glacier would break off, it would fall down the valley into Thunder Creek, producing the thundering-like sound where it gets its name. You'll see
see the boat boarding over here. We'll walk over out onto the boat launch there. Now off to my left, you'll notice a large cinder block building was blocked along the roadway. That's men and women's restrooms. I encourage you to use them now. There are no restrooms on the boat. However, there are restrooms half hour from here up at Ross. So, and we'll have a designated break at that time. If you'd just like to follow me along, we'll head over to the boat. I do remind everybody this is public roadway. So we'll head on to that. Welcome to the Ellis Ross 3. Originally built in 1978, the boat was broken in half and trucked over from Mystic, Connecticut to be launched here on Diablo Lake, specifically for the tours.
Bottom, place it over your head, wrap the strap around your back, clip the clip. On the main deck, there's one underneath the ladder at the stern, and one up here by the drinking fountain. On the upper deck, they're on either side of the pilot house. Now the bow is open, the upper deck...
Probably not. I'll be all done with school in March. A permanent job, yeah. Not just temporary stuff. I love how it's... The little ones? Yeah. I don't know. What have you done next, please? That shed there? That's where we dry dock this boat in the winter. How do you leave? Yeah, I don't know. The resort was closed because it was bought by the city of Seattle. As part of our relicensing agreement with the federal government, we agreed to buy the resort and turn it into an environmental learning center. It was privately owned. I don't know.
We had to go up to the steps, huh?
No.
Oh, we're having a good time. We got, let's see, we've got 6 tours left counting this one, and now the weather finally got incredible. It'll probably be nice all of September.
Texas. Oh, yeah. A lot of Texas.
That's the only way to get heavy equipment such as dump trucks and oil trucks up to the Ross powerhouse, and they'll load those pieces of equipment up on the barges and then use tugboats to push them up through the canyon here. Also, if you look into Buster Brown Cove and you look far deep into the cove, you'll notice a little dock. Buster Brown Cove is a campsite. There's 3 campsites on Diablo Lake here. There's one up Thunder Arm by Colonial Creek Campground, known as Thunder Point. There's the Buster Arm Cove, and if you look off to our starboard side, you can see the other campsite, Hidden Cove. Often we'll get a lot of kayakers, canoeists that come out on the lake for a little...
We may have to bring our canoe up here.
dumps on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. They do.
Oh, yeah.
But it'd be a good experience.
All right, well, welcome to Ross Powerhouse. Now, right here behind us, if you look on the other side of the platform there, we have all of the elements of the hydroelectric process. You can see the corner of Ross Dam there. It's the structure with all of the squares in it. The water from behind the dam goes through power tunnels. Those power tunnels feed the water into the powerhouse, and after the water goes through the generators, it is exiting through the concrete bulkheads that are right here behind us. Now that turbulent area of water is where the water is exiting. It looks kind of like a big jacuzzi. However, we don't recommend that you try and jump in today. The water is only about 42 degrees, and that's the warmest that it ever gets. So it's extremely cold and not quite ideal for swimming here in Diablo Lake. Now when we go inside, it's going to be a little bit noisy, so I'd like to tell you what you'll see inside before we go in. First, we'll walk up a rampway, and then at the top of the ramp, we'll be walking by some pieces of green machinery that will be on your right. Those are the air compressors that we use to stop our generators. From there, you'll be going down the governor's gallery. This is where the junior operator used to manually turn on and off the generators before everything became automated here in this plant. Now, all of those dials and levers are still operable, so we do ask that you watch your camera straps, purse straps, and small children while you're walking through there. If you do happen to bump a knob or switch a switch or anything like that, let Doug or I know right away, please. We will send our operator down to figure out what you did wrong, and we'll get it all fixed, and that way we can be on our way again. From there, from the Governor Gallery, we'll be going through the turbine pits. Now this is the heart of our generators, and it looks like at least one of the generators we'll be walking through today will be in operation. So that means that generator shaft in front of you will be spinning at about 150 revolutions per minute. And as you walk through there, if you'd like to, you can reach out and touch that shaft as it spins, but make sure you touch it in the direction that it's spinning, okay? From there, we'll be coming out, we'll go through the electrical gallery, and at the end of that gallery, we'll be going up 2 flights of stairs, about 22 steps in all, and we'll be going out onto the observation deck where you'll get your closest and most impressive view of Ross Dam. From there, we'll go into the control room, we'll have a short break, there will be restrooms up at that point, then we'll come back to the boat by a different route. So if you would like to follow Doug, he's going to lead you inside of Ross Powerhouse.
Out at Ross Dam, the third dam in the Skagit hydroelectric project. Ross is also our highest dam. It's 1,300 feet across up at the crest and stands 540 feet tall. Now distances with a structure this size can be a little deceiving. Would anybody like to guess how far we are away from the dam at this point? Quarter mile, exactly right. We're from here on the observation deck, we're a quarter mile up to Ross Dam there. Now those squares are 2.5 feet deep. Anybody like to guess how many there are? Well, I'll give you a chance to count them while I explain why they're there. Now, Ross Dam was originally planned to be built in 3 stages between the years 1937 and 1949. Now you can see from the gray part there, that's where the first stage was completed, and then the next 2 were poured at the same time. Hopefully they were trying to get the dam done in time to help with the war effort by producing more electricity. Unfortunately, the dam didn't get finished until 1949. Now originally, they were going to add 121 feet onto the top of this dam, and this would have been known as High Ross. Well, the engineers at the time figured if they were going to make the dam taller, they're also going to have to make it wider. So they put all those squares in there because they originally planned to pour new concrete down the face of the dam, and the squares would have helped the new concrete better adhere to the old concrete, creating an interlocking-like effect. Well, in 1984, they were still even then considering about putting High Ross on there. But you see, it would have flooded another 5 to 6 miles of Canadian land. They're none too happy with that idea, as you can imagine. So in 1984, we signed a treaty with Canada, and currently, BC Hydroelectric sends us the power that we would have got producing High Ross at a cost comparable to what it would have cost to actually build the addition. So we're looking at an 80-year agreement. So for a while here, we're still looking at one of the world's highest wall iron. Yeah. Anybody like to guess how many squares there are? 1,600. 1,600? A little more than that. How many? 20,000, a little less than 20,000. Yep. That's pretty close, but yeah, exactly right. 2,350 squares on the face of Ross Dam. I've counted them. Now Ross Dam, Ross Dam has 12 spillway gates. It has 6 on the left side and 6 on the right side. And the water from those spillway gates are spilled. They'll open spillway gates on the opposite side of each other. So when the plumes of water come down, they'll meet in the middle and they'll expel its force on each other and then drop straight down in the water below. That way we don't have the erosion problem that we have up the Ross project. Also, we can spill water through the valve housing, the butterfly valves located in the center of the dam. Those are 6 feet in diameter. But currently the one on the right is open, but the back of that's sealed to keep water out of there. If it was opened all the way, it could spill water about 1/8 of a mile. So we get a very heavy mist standing out here on the deck. You can also spill water through the old diversion tunnels. Now when they build a dam in a high canyon like this, they'll dig a tunnel through the hillside to divert the water through, and then they'll build a temporary dam behind which they'll build a permanent dam. Well, in most cases, usually when the dams are completed, they knock out the temporary dam and seal off the diversion tunnels. Well, here at Ross, what they did is they capped the diversion tunnels, put a Johnson hollow joint needle valve on them, and the end of that comes out about where those cranes are down there and where the tug is, and that's where the water from there will exit. Of course, the most important way to get water from behind a dam is through power generation. Now, the water stored in the reservoir will pass through the power tunnels up through the hillside directly behind us, and then passes down behind the powerhouse here, drops straight down into the generators that we just walked through, exits out through the bottom there. Now, you might be wondering what this tin shed is directly behind me. That is a tunnel which takes you up through the hillside here, and it leads directly into a staircase in the dam. It's one of the ways that they used to get up, especially during the winter times. Now, you might be wondering, how do you get up to the top of Ross Lake? You might, in the slideshow, you saw the resort up there. You might be interested in some of the hiking and fishing. Well, there's 3 ways to get up there. The first, the only road that leads down to Ross Lake is from Hope, British Columbia. It's a 38-mile logging road that heads to the north end of the lake, which is 21 miles from here up in Canada. So it's a bit of a drive. Now from this end, there's 2 ways to get up to the Ross Lake. One is through a hiking trail, and it's a mile marker 134. It's the Ross Lake trailhead, and it's a mile of switchback trails down to the lake's top. Also, you can take that fisherman's tug that I mentioned earlier, and the resort will meet you with a flatbed truck and take you up the service road that you might have seen as the boat came in through the tunnel there. All right. Well, at this point, we have the optional part of the tour. Tanya's going to be giving a talk about the control room inside the powerhouse here. It's optional because it can get a little more technical, and it's a little bit more about how the powerhouse here operates. If you'd like to, you're more than welcome to stay out here on the observation deck. This is a designated smoking area, so for that reason. Or we also have restrooms, and the men's is down through this door, straight down the hallway. And then for the women's, if you just follow the signs through the yellow signs through the lobby. So at this point, if you just follow Tanya, she'll take you into the control room.
line distinct where the two waters meet. The clear green water behind us is raw slate water that's come down through the turbines, and it's forcing the milky green water of Diablo Lake back into the lake. The milky green water is that color because of a glacial sediment called Skagit gneiss, which I'm sure you were told about on your way up here. But anyhow, there are 17 glaciers that feed Diablo Lake. That's giving it this color. And right here's where the two waters meet. Thank you.
Diablo below us. You look off to our extreme right there, you'll notice the houses over there. That's also part of the town of Diablo, and that's where the early construction workers on the dams used to live. Well, they lived in tar paper shacks down there, and they lived on the mud flat of Statato Creek. Periodically, that creek would flood. They'd never know if they'd come home to find their kitchens under 3 feet of water or not. Well, it was pretty miserable all around. They figured if they couldn't live in a glamorous place, they'd give it a glamorous name. And that's why that section of Diablo has always been known as Hollywood. Now, if you look straight down in the town below us, it's another section of Diablo. And this is an old sandbar, the original Skagit River. And this is where the old miners and prospectors of the area used to live. And it could get pretty miserable out here. They lived in tents, and with the heavy winds we get coming up the valley, and the strong winters here, to get as much heat into their tents as possible, they put reflective pieces of metal behind their fires to begin to heat back in. And that's why this section of town's always been known as Reflector Bar. Now, if you look straight down to Reflector Bar, you'll notice the tour center where we left today. It's a large brick building. It's got the playground off to the left. It's got the flags on the right there. Anybody like to guess what it once was? Schoolhouse. Sure, it was the old Diablo schoolhouse. Before the dams were automated, there was enough children that lived in the area that it warranted a school. Well, back in the 60s, when those dams came online, a lot of the families moved away. So the children that now live in the town have to commute to school to the town of Concrete, 40 miles to the west of us. That's an 80-mile round-trip bus ride a day. And if you were to go to school at the Concrete schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, and you didn't miss any days of school, that's 7.9 times around the world on a bus. Makes them our Rhodes Scholars. Because of the solid education they get in Concrete. Oh, boy. Alright, well, as we come down the hillside here, you look straight across the valley, you notice that large piece of metal up there. That's our drive-in theater here at Diablo. It's also our microwave relay panel, and as Tanya mentioned before, the microwave relays that carry the signal up to the generators from Seattle. Well, there's 6 of those panels along the valley that help beam that signal up the hill. Now, again, if we look straight down at the town of Diablo, you notice the trees down there, something interesting about them. First of all, they kind of have a little leftward lean to them. That's because of the strong winds we get up here through the valley. It causes all our trees to kind of lean to the left a little bit. Also, you notice that a lot of those trees aren't native to the area. Well, J.D. Ross, Superintendent of Seattle City Light, not only wanted to put his dams on display up here, but the town is Diablo as well. So he brought in a lot of exotic plants and flowers to the area. He had some of these trees. Some of these trees actually came from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's nursery back at his house in New York. Also, during the tour season, they'd have orchids lining the sidewalks down below. JD, tell everybody they grew so well because of the excellent Skagit weather we had up here. What he failed to mention was the greenhouses that they have down in the town of New Halem for those plants to grow during the winter months. Now originally, this was a 2-day tour. You'd go up to the town of Rockport, where you take the train up to New Halem, then you'd spend the night there. They'd have a dance, they'd offer a dinner there, and then you spent the rest of the day touring. Well, it became a very, very popular honeymoon gift, more of a practical joke honeymoon gift, because what the newlyweds found out when they got up into the town of New Halem is that men slept in one bunkhouse and the women slept in another. Some very upset newlyweds there at the beginning. My grandma and my grandparents went on that tour, and my grandma's still fairly upset about that. Now also, for those tours, down here in the town of Diablo, they have colored lights installed in all the street lights through here. They then play orchestral music through the town itself, so you can take a romantic stroll here. It was also a custom that on tour days, everybody had to take their wash down from the lines. Nobody could see that out of the laundry they had sitting out. Now that we've reached the bottom of the incline lift, we're going to be heading over to the cookhouse. We do have a couple rules we ask you to follow while we're in the cookhouse, make the dining experience much more pleasurable. First, we're going to be collecting your tickets when we get in there, so if you could have your tickets ready, that'd be great. Second of all, our tables in there only seat 10 or less, so if you could split up into groups of less than 10, that would be wonderful. Also, we need to have all members of your group present when we seat you. If there's 4 people in your group and only 3 of you are there, we'll ask you to wait until that 4th person shows up. If you need to use the restroom or go out to your car, there's plenty of time after you've been seated. So you could just have your tickets ready. You could be in groups of less than 10. If you could make sure all the members of your group present when we go into the dining hall, that would be excellent. Now as we get down towards the bottom here, please prepare for a slight jolt. Board member Wayne's up there eyeballing it, so some days are better than others. As we reach the bottom, this does mark the official end of the Skagit tour. I know Tanya and I had a wonderful day today, part of it because of you, and we had excellent weather. I hope you leave some of it when you leave today. Thank you again for taking the Skagit tours.